next learning moment is on progressive web apps. Now, I'll be honest up front, we aren't covering everything there is to know about progressive web apps. That's a course on its own. But we're going to take our application as it is now and realize some great advantages by turning it into a progressive web app, even though it might not essentially have a huge increase in functionality, at the very least being installable and cached. We'll see performance and convenience improvements. So it's good to introduce this topic at this point in the course. All right, so I've got a PowerPoint here. I might as well get started with that. We'll have a discussion, right? So progressive web apps. Give your web app superpowers. Yay! All right. You know, the whole world is going towards apps. Just having a good website hardly is enough anymore. If it's not an app on a mobile device or whatever, right? Then what's the point these days, it seems almost. But truth is, progressive web apps, as opposed to a native app, has a number of advantages, believe it or not, right? Time, money, and reach. Okay. And we'll touch on each of those. It's much faster to get a progressive web app usually up and running than it is a native app. So that saves a lot of money right there. And reach, because anything that can connect to the internet and has an updated browser on it, any kind of device, iPhone, Android phone, you name it, tablets of any type, Macs, PCs, they can all take the advantages of a progressive web app very quickly and easily. All right, so really, what are the characteristics? What makes a progressive web app? Well, you should be aware that they're very fast loading compared to just your website, offline capable. Now, the degree of capability is variable depending on how much work you put into it. They always are connected only through HTTPS. Everything, every resource that the app utilizes from the internet must come through a secure connection, right? But they're very app-like. Instead of having it in the browser with all the address bar at the top, the browser Chrome and so on, it looks just like it's a native app running on the device itself, right? But it is distributed through the web. So that means it's linkable. You can locate it on the web very easily. And they all can also are published in stores. So the Google Play Store, many of the apps there are actually progressive web apps. Same with the Microsoft Store and so on. So you can publish your app that way through the store, or you can just pass out links to it, right? Another thing is updates. Updates are automatic. As soon as you update the website, right, that the progressive web app is based on, then the next time a person opens the app, they get the latest version automatically. So much better in many ways than a native app that you have to worry about, oh, what clients have updated, which ones haven't, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, the fact that it is installable, right? So it gets its own icon in the start menu on a PC, right? You can have that shortcut on the desktop or the little menu across the bottom and so on and so forth, right? Same on a Mac, any kind of tablets, Androids, iPhones, as I said, right? You just select the add to home screen option and basically it gets installed just like any other app in the menu, right? So what's not to like about all of these advantages? Okay, so it's cross-platform as well. So anything that can access the internet with an up-to-date browser pretty much can run and install a progressive web apps. And they have a lot of capabilities beyond what you would normally even think, right? Uh, Push notifications is a big one, right? Background sync. So if you're using local storage to store data, going to more of a occasionally connected application design, right? Then you can work locally to a certain degree, and next time you connect, synchronize data and so on in the background, right? You can access things like game pads and so on. You can use media capture and playback, all kinds of things. Peer-to-peer networking can be supported, Bluetooth and so on and so forth, right? So you can have it vibrate the device. So it's, many of the same capabilities you would get with a native application are available in a progressive web app. So they are immensely important in the development horizon. And one reason for that is both the big players out there, Google and Microsoft, are strongly backing and promoting progressive web apps, right? So we're not saying that native mobile apps are going away, right? But the importance of progressive web apps has just been growing and growing. Now, what does it take, right? Well, you need to have a good, responsive, well-designed, and functioning application to begin with, right? Responsive is very important because your PWA could be installed on anything from a small little smartphone right up to, of course, a huge Microsoft Surface, for example, and so on and so forth, right? Everything, as I said, has to come through HTTPS. So it has to have that green padlock, so to speak, on your connection, right? Everything is secure. Now you can use localhost while you're developing, and it won't complain. It'll let you test it and verify the functionality as far as that goes. But when it's actually up there on the internet and running, everything must be secure. What you need as well is a service worker, right? This is what really opened up the possibility to actually having progressive web apps. We're familiar with services, right? Services run on your devices, whether it's a PC, your phone, or anything else. Well, a service worker is basically a script written in JavaScript that runs in the background on the local device. So what that really, really means is the app doesn't have to be visible. It doesn't have to be up and running, right? But the service worker provides the ability for the operating system to store it as a service running on the device, so it can be listening for things like requests. So push notifications, for example, can come through even if the app isn't even quote open at this point in time, right? So we have to provide that service worker script. Along with that, we have to have a manifest. This is to do with actually it being installable. So it's just a simple little JSON file. You can add a number of additional options to it, but at the very least, there's 4 properties. You have to have the name, the short name, the start URL, and what the display option is for the manifest. Now, normally we'll also include in there paths to the main icons to be used, because after all, what good is an app without an icon? Right? So we'll see in a moment here, there's other things to add as well. But those are the 2 most important fundamental things: a service worker script, and that normally is stored right in the www root folder in our MVC application. And the manifest JSON file also goes in that same location in our project structure. Right? You can change those to other locations, but you just make it hard on yourself. So why, right? Okay, just to continue on. Normally, we would provide at least 2 icons. Technically, you can get away with only 1, right? But usually we'll put an icon. Now, they have to be specific sizes to satisfy the requirements of PWA. So usually a 192 pixel by 192, and then a 512 by 512. So they're used for different, menu systems and so on the different devices, right? The paths to these icons will be in your manifest JSON file itself, but we normally put the icons in our images folder, right? Okay, so we're almost done. That's the basics in the background. Now we have to just be able to tell the client that, guess what? I'm a progressive web app. And we mainly do that in the head section in our MVC applications in the layout page, right? So we just put that there, this link to the manifest file, and that should be available on all pages. No matter where you go, you're being reminded this is a progressive web app and this is how it's set up, right? So that's usually the best place to put it, is right in layout, so it's available everywhere. And we also need a script to actually install the service worker, right? Now, it's a little noisy, and some people comment in the different blogs about that having this say on in the footer of every page you go to, well, that's just kind of overkill because it's very chatty. And hey, once it's installed and running. You don't have to ask for it to be installed over and over. So I usually put it on the home index, right? That way, it's not overkill in terms of asking for it to be installed at every page refresh. Once it's installed, it's installed. So that's about it. Okay. So how do you turn your site into PWA? Well, basically add those different required components I just talked about. But there's a lot to PWAs that we haven't touched on yet. So just for some history as well as some resources for you. Really, it started right back, oh gosh, way back in 2015 here. Progressive Web Apps, Google project, right? But it's open source and everybody can get on board. Okay. So I'll let you have a look at that resource. Another one that I've used a lot is PWA Builder. Now, I'll be honest, I like the way it used to work better than the way it does now, but it's still a great resource to help you get your PWAs up and running. Um, to explain my comment, I guess. See, it used to be that it just helped you generate the code you needed, the different service worker files and manifests and so on, right? It would just help you write them. Now they've gone to this model where actually a lot of it is done with links to scripts and so on their site. So you kind of become dependent on PWA Builder going forward if you use their site now and use the scripts that it generates for you, which is okay, but it's just it's kind of a informal dependency. Mind you, you get that in most places these days, so it's not the end of the world, right? Another very popular one for .NET applications is this one here. This one fellow has put this together with input from a large community of supporting developers, right? It provides a great middleware that actually takes care of much of the more advanced features as well of progressive web apps and is designed specifically for our types of applications that we're building, right? Is it the holy grail? Well, maybe close. It doesn't quite have every capability of a PWA automatically handled in it, but it's been getting better and more improved over time. So it's certainly having a look at, and it's easy to get to because it's also available as a NuGet package, right? So Web Essentials ASP.NET Core.pwa, you can just do an install package on that, but you need to really go to the documentation for it as well because there's a fair bit to get it configured and up and working. I shouldn't say a fair, but it actually makes it very easy from a certain point of view. But it does have a lot of capabilities, so that's a level of complication you need the documentation for. Okay. Now you can customize a number of features in either startup.cs or the app settings JSON file to work along with your progressive web app. Mainly, there's discussion of different caching strategies. Remember, this is designed to work offline, right? So you can do cache first, network first. So does every request try the network first, and if you can't, then you go to the cache. Or for certain things, you go to the cache first and see if it's there, and if not, then you go to the network and so on and so forth, right? So I'm not going to go through all this. You can read the documentation, decide what works best for yourself, and configure it appropriately. By the way, just the other day I used this as I often have in the past, this NuGet package, and I ran into an issue that I was getting with comments warning that there are changes on the horizon, right? By August of this year, the installable property of progressive web apps is changing, right? They are clamping down. Right now, there has to be at least some offline capability to be installed as a progressive web app, but the browsers don't have a methodology or didn't to actually verify that there was offline capability, at the very least one offline page, right? So that is changing, and they're adding that to all the key browsers, Chrome, Edge, etc., all the ones based on Chromium, which are the main ones you're going to be looking at using here, right? So that's changing in August, and so I ran into a problem getting this NuGet package to work and avoid that error. It would install for now, but it warned that coming August it would no longer install without further changes. So I'm not sure if I was just hurrying and I missed a step or something, or whether it's an update they're going to make to the package. But in any case, I'm quite used to just using my own code anyway, and it's still working just fine. So just be aware you may or may not run into an issue with that. All right, so I'm just going to leave off our discussion there. I'll maybe stop and start the recording as we go into our demo.